Hello and welcome to The Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we take a holistic look at one issue. Everybody, at least those who are either personally looking for a government job or somebody in their family is looking for one. Mind you, these jobs are shrinking in India, but despite that, most people know about the UPSC expanded form Union Public Service Commission. Now, this is the body which actually does the entire job of central jobs are recruited. Most importantly, the civil services aptitude test, and which goes into the central services, the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, Foreign Service, and a host of other allied services. That is, this selection process is done by the UPSC. Now, this very important body, UPSC, is actually marking its centenary year because on the 1st of October 1926, it was established as a public service commission. Then later on, it became in 1937, it became the Federal Public Service Commission. And finally, when India became a republic, it became the UPSC, in its present form. Uh, there is also a history prior to 1926, that is, 1860s onwards, when Satyendranath Tagore became the first Indian civil service officer. But that's an entire generation, a period of the Indian bureaucracy is has come out of the UPSC. So we will be talking about the pluses of the UPSC, what are the limitations and what are the shortcomings, and most importantly, in the times ahead, what kind of reforms are we really looking at. So I will be speaking on this particularly important matter to somebody who understands the government of India and its functioning very well. That is Harsh Mander, who was a member of the Indian Administrative Service till 2002, when he, sought voluntary retirement from the services because after the Gujarat riots, he did not want to continue in the services and spend his life in other areas. He is an author, columnist, researcher, teacher, social activist. He's also a member of a very key member of this very important group, which is called the Constitutional Conduct Group, a group of retired civil servants who actually voice their opinion on very crucial issues and sound the warning bell whenever things are going awry. So, welcome to this program, Harsh Mander, and thank you very much for joining this, even while you are traveling outside India and having a very heavy professional schedule. It's
Thank you.
wonderful to speak to you again.
Thank you, Nilanjan. Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with the UPSC. You know that there are two sides to the coin. On one side, people say that it has been upholding meritocracy. Also provides equal opportunity. But on the other side, there are very significant shortcomings that we would like to understand. Somebody who has actually seen this entire system very intimately, and also the UPSC, can you just initiate this conversation by telling us that what are the pluses and the minuses? How do you look at the UPSC when we are taking stock of it in its centenary?
You know, under Mr. Modi, a lot of our democratic institutions have started collapsing, and their credibility has started collapsing. But until he came on board, the UPSC was one of the institutions that seemed almost above all criticism of its of its independence, of its fairness, and so on. Government jobs are, of course, hugely sought after in our country. The IAS, it's probably the Indian Administrative Service is probably the most competitive exam maybe in the world, because something like 1 million people
That's
sit
right.
for the exam every year, and they take about 100 people at the end of it in the Indian Administrative Service. and so on. So all the all India services together would be about 1,000 people. But the ratio,
Mhm.
it really makes it the most competitive exam in the world. And until recently, you know, there I have many problems with the the methodology of recruitment, but never was there a doubt about uh, the fact that the UPSC functions with a certain degree of integrity and fairness. And I think that's been its great accomplishment. The state public service commissions, almost all of them are clouded with corruption
Yes.
charges, and so on. The UPSC has even till today is not tainted with corruption charges. I think that's something to be grateful for, to start with.
You're talking about not UPSC not being tainted with corruption charges, but yes, there have been certain amount of some problems, some question marks. 2024 was actually a year which, the year of the Lok Sabha election. It started on a very dramatic note when one election commissioner departed from the commission, resigned, and no explanation was provided by the government, which raised a big question marks about the institution and the integrity of the Election Commission of India. I'm referring to the ECI, only because there is something similar which also happened in the UPSC. Its chairman resigned, even though there was a long tenure, there, Mr. Manoj Soni, if the name I remember correctly, yeah, Manoj Soni. He put in his papers, and the government also did not give any, explanation as to why it happened. Now, an episode like this, how do you look at it, and what do you think that there has not been any clarification from the government? What does it really convey to the people?
I think that up to now, up to the present government's tenure from 2014, people you know, of of reputation, of integrity, who also, I think, very importantly, subscribe to uh, what we could describe as constitutional morality, its consensus, secularism, the socialist ideals, democracy. It was taken for granted that you would have people who are committed to these values, who would be because the civil servant is supposed to be upholding above all. When we join the civil services, we are upholding and defending India's constitutional,
That's right.
the
The
framework.
loyalty was to the constitution, not to the political
I
masters.
in very often, and I also served a term in the IAS Academy in Missouri,
That's right.
trains new civil servants. And I would always say that we'll be told that our duty is to primarily to obey the elected government. But we are servants of the elected government. But before that, we are servants, firstly, of the Constitution, and second, I would say, of the most oppressed, marginalized people within the jurisdiction in which we work. We are first their servants and then the servants of the elected government, and we must stand in defense of the interests of first the values of the constitution and the interests and rights of the most disadvantaged. And if there's a conflict between these and the elected government, then actually it is the your duty is first to the constitution and to the people of disadvantage. It's a premise that I think we've held on to, and I quickly go back to Sardar Patel when he famously talked about the civil services as being India's steel frame. And if we look back, partition violence, the country being torn apart on the basis of religious hatred, a million people slaughtering each other, caste and other loyalties, and it was why he called it the steel frame was there was an expectation that everything else the political parties may still use religion and caste and language and region, etc., to divide people. But it would be the civil service which would hold the constitution in a sense close to its heart and would stand in defense of constitutional values, which also means the defense of the rights of minorities, caste minorities, religious minorities, working class people, gender minorities, and so on. I think
All the
that was
fundamental rights.
for their fundamental rights,
Rights.
and I think that it was that faith that that led him to call it the steel frame. It was that faith and that mandate that led many of us to sit for the civil service exams. The year I joined the academy was 1993 in the IAS Academy. A year
Hmm.
earlier, the Babri Masjid had been demolished. It was well known that in 1992, after the Babri Masjid was demolished, the topper of the batch in the earlier batch had organized a big party to celebrate the demolition of the Babri Masjid
This was in Missouri.
in Missouri, in the academy. And the director who joined at the same time, Dr. N.C. Saxena, was a person of significant stature and moral stature and integrity. And all of us on the faculty felt that our job was, in this very turbulent time after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, for, for training our civil servants into the values of the constitution.
Upholding secular values in the country, and
Absolutely.
ensuring that something like a majoritarian incident was not celebrated in the academy of all places.
So now, so in the 3 years that I spent there, I found that was something I devoted myself to. My other colleagues also did. Also, a commitment to the very poor, their rights. So both equity, social justice, secularism, fraternity. These were values that we sought, and in the years that have passed, I look perhaps with some the bias of a teacher, but I look with pride at
Okay.
at the people we trained. But I used to feel that the recruitment process into the civil services, what are we looking for when, what do you want in your senior civil servant? I think I would say you want firstly moral courage. You need, I would call public compassion. And the third is financial integrity. The strange thing is that the recruitment process actually has very little to do with evaluating any of this. You
Right.
have instead you have to go through this really mindless marathon. It really tests your stamina to be able to sit for years just studying for an exam where 1 million people sit and 100 people are recruited. And your ability to go through that and stand through. But it was at the stage of the UPSC, the 45 minutes or an hour that you'd be interviewed, that had anything, that was the only stage in the recruitment process where your commitment to these values, your moral courage, your commitment to the values of the Constitution, your integrity, your public compassion, all of this was evaluated. And therefore, the UPSC plays a very significant role. I mean, I feel that we we needed to reimagine the entire process and not have so much weightage on on this marathon exam, and instead could we imagine ways of
Absolute knowledge of the subject which the
yeah,
candidate has chosen. Can
yeah,
we actually frame
because
it that way?
because at the time that I had joined, uh, the overwhelming majority of people in the general category who were selected were from the IITs and the
Mm.
IIM. And I
And
must
I,
say, and I must say that I found a much higher level of communal and casteist beliefs among them, and we worked among them, and they were open and bright. But uh, this process of selection was already very problematic. I mean, I imagined a different process. For instance, that you do a broad selection of a much larger number and then ask them to go and actually work in difficult areas for 2 or 3 years. You then evaluate them on these criteria. But anyway, that never happened. But through all of this, the point that I'm trying to make is that no one had any doubt about the UPSC intervention, the process that they intervened. It was a fair exam by the parameters that were set. And the interview, for instance, for me, I would not have gotten to the service if it was not for the interview. I got a very high evaluation on the interview, and because they saw in me the kind of person that they wanted in the civil service, presumably. My problem is that in recent years, when I talk about different institutions being destroyed one by one, democratic institutions, Mr. Modi, I think, has learned the key way to destroy these institutions, and that is just by the selection of people. Now, how do you destroy the National Human Rights Commission? How do you destroy the National Commission for Minorities? How do you destroy the Election Commission? How do you destroy the Planning Commission? How do you destroy, which is now the
the
Niti
planning
Aayog?
commission doesn't exist there.
It is, yeah, the Niti Aayog.
Niti Aayog now.
Niti Aayog. How do you destroy also the UPSC? The kinds of people who are being selected are deeply worrying. The bona fides of the gentleman that you mentioned, I don't want to discuss them in
Well, we are
particular
not discussing individuals here, I can
individuals
promise.
here, but certainly these are not people uh, who you are confident actually as people who stood for these values of the Constitution. I mean, have in their public life, they seem to be much closer aligned to the political project of the BJP and the RSS, and that is problematic because the BJP and the RSS quite clearly are not committed to the values of the Constitution. And I think we are in this, we are embroiled in a situation where in in the project of the BJP and the RSS, they want to remold the country into a majoritarian Hindu Rashtra. And for that, the civil services also have to be aligned to those values.
But the
And
RSS and the BJP also say that they are committed to the constitution.
that's
In
another
fact,
debate.
Mr. Modi calls the constitution as India's only holy book.
Yeah. I wish he would, demonstrate that in practice because the kind of uh, violence that India's Muslims are facing, in particular Christians also in different areas, um, is completely contrary to the values and the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution
Constitution.
guaranteed equal citizenship to people of every faith, identity, caste. That is not the India that we are living through. That's a different project or different discussion altogether. So
Yes.
I believe that I worry about what is happening in the UPSC as I'm worried about what is happening in places like the National Human Rights Commission and so on. Even the judiciary to some degree is in the nature of people being appointed without who should be indisputably independent and committed to
Okay.
only the set of values of the Constitution.
So, what emerges is that you say that among the biggest challenges at the moment, definitely, is that we do not know whether it will continue, whether it will continue to happen as far long as this government is in office. But we would definitely like to see a greater amount of commitment among the people who are appointed to the UPSC, greater commitment to the Constitution. This is what you say. Now,
Absolutely.
while preparing for this conversation, reading up about it, because very honestly speaking, UPSC has not been, the central concern of the media for a long time. It's something which has always been there and is supposed to be doing an exemplary job, and it does not get written about much also.
We took it
Now,
for granted. We took it for granted in a sense.
it was considered that it is there, and it is there in New Delhi. It is there on this beautiful road, has a beautiful, office, good looking heritage building with a very famous chartwala there. So that is,
I was just going to say,
and
but
that culture is,
don't forget the chartwala next
yeah, I
to
cannot, because it
UPSC.
has been integral to the existence of, within Delhi, and anybody who comes into all UPSC aspirants, they come and at least see that building, and they definitely, most of them would end up having a chart. I have heard numerous stories about this. It's been, that is something which has been actually, the chartwala has been written about more in the media than the UPSC, which actually says, that as to what extent was actually it was considered to be granted, that here is something which is actually a very safe institution. But there are also these reports which are tabled in parliament, the UPSC reports are tabled. But I think, that's the end of it. Nothing really comes out of these. They do not get debated, they do not get commented. Would you like to see some kind of a change in these processes, and not bring it under executive control, because it is supposed to be a constitutional body? In fact, for the benefit of our viewers, articles 315 to 323, pertain to the UPSC, and it is ingrained in the constitution, is something which must be understood. About these reports.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that uh, for I've been district collector in 6 districts in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. I realized in those years how much power and influence the civil servant has on the lives of disadvantaged people. I mean, we can. It should not be the case. It should not be the case. It's that's again a different question. But the kind of power over the lives of powerless people that the police, the administrative service wields, for instance, is huge. We cannot be taking chances with the process which both selects and trains these people. It's not a trivial question. It's not even, you're recruiting to a private corporation. Okay, profits will be affected. You recruit wrongly in the civil services. The destinies of people whose only protection is the constitution, and those who are implementing it are substantially the civil servants. Uh, I feel that we have to have a much larger national debate about how do we protect the an institution like the UPSC.
Okay.
And I think that the very first thing that we have to ensure is a much more open system of selection of members of the UPSC, which should not be in the hands exclusively of the ruling government. In fact, I feel there has to be a much larger transparent process in which the government is not the deciding factor. But that is the case also, say, with the
Or for several other institutions.
with the election commission, which you spoke about, with the National Human
Yes.
Rights Commission, which I spoke about, with so many in the Information Commission, the Commission for Minorities, SC/ST commissions. All of these, I think we had lived in the Nehruvian years and then for the decades that followed, we had a certain faith that the process of selection, which is dominated by the executive, by the ruling government, uh, would uh, would still recruit people somewhat deserving of placement in these positions.
The
Uh,
power would not be abused.
yeah,
But
that they might be aligned to a political party, but they still would have indisputable commitment to the constitution itself. I think that faith has completely broken down, and the kind of, I mean, let me just give you one example of why I feel so worried. Again, from the ground, bulldozers. This whole business of bulldozer justice, injustice. I mean, there is no law in this country which says uh, somebody's committed a crime and you can just go and bulldoze the person's home. And secondly, to establish that that person has committed a crime,
there is a certain
the whole
process.
process, you file an FIR, the police investigates, a charge sheet, trial, high court, Supreme Court, then you decide. Now, what we are seeing in district after district after district is that the government, I mean, there's this, some people go and dance out in front of a mosque, they use abusive language, there's some stirring, there's stone throwing, there's a communal clash, and 2 days later the government decides that these 10 or 20 people are responsible and they bulldoze their homes. Now, this is, to my mind, it's symbolic of where we are talking about commitment to the constitution. You've just thrown the constitution into the dustbin, and I keep looking for one district magistrate who says, I refuse to do this because this is against both the law and the constitution. I'm not able to find that district magistrate, and it pains my heart hugely because I've been in the service. I know how much power you wield, and I have seen people who have stood very tall uh, in these circumstances, and the failure to the willingness of civil servants across to participate, to collaborate in processes that are entirely unconstitutional and unjust. It should be a wake-up call for all of us. How are we placing people in positions of high authority and power? How are we
Yes.
selecting them? Yes.
Yeah. You were talking about Prime Minister Modi and what has happened to the UPSC since 2014 after he became the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just trying to draw your attention to certain things which has been said by the Prime Minister and by the government in regard to the civil services. The Prime Minister, as we all know, likes this word mission.
Mm.
uh, Very recently, he said, that he's, a demographic mission is going to be started, to detect who are the foreigners in the country. We really, have spent decades debating this entire issue, and we have not been able to find demographic data regarding this. But anyway, that is a different matter. So quite early in his stint as Prime Minister, he had launched something called the Mission Karmayogi, which was directed at the civil service. Now, it said, that this program supports a shift from, I'm quoting from a government document which says, rule based to role based human resource management, allocating jobs and training based on an officer's competencies rather than fixed rules. Now, is this not taking us into the entire realm of arbitrariness? You are moving away from rule based system of governance to something which we really cannot quantify. Who is going to decide what is the officer's competence? The competency was decided at the time when that person was selected, but after that it's only promotions which determine the competency of a person, if at all the promotions are done very fairly or not. So this entire approach, what do you make out of it? What is being attempted?
No, I think it is very worrying because also you need to ask competence for what? what are you expecting from this civil servant? And I am expecting what I said earlier. I'm expecting moral courage. I'm expecting the courage to dissent in the interest of defending the constitution and the poor. I'm are those competencies is what you're seeking out in the Karmayogi program? I doubt it,
Mhm.
and the whole system is in fact doing quite the reverse. We're seeing. Let us take another example. We're seeing this extraordinary rewriting of India's textbooks.
Right.
This cannot happen. I mean, this is the whole government system. You have ministries which are looking at textbooks. How are they permitting? I mean, we're now even portraying Akbar as a religious bigot. We're portraying, rewriting, allowing the rewriting of history. We are allowing uh, the role of various people in the freedom struggle. How are we even talking about Gandhiji's role and why he was assassinated? How are they permitting this rewriting of history? They've now changed the rules and said people in the RSS, you can be a civil servant and a member of the RSS.
They made this amendment last year.
Yeah, it's
To,
quite extraordinary. They've talked about. I mean, we have this. The Prime Minister released a coin with these men in khaki shorts, sort of saluting the Bhagwa Jhanda,
and Bharat Mata.
and Bharat Mata. So we are, and all of this is having been a civil servant. I know that without the consent of the civil servant, none of this is possible. None of this
Mhm.
is possible. And so they are allowing willing participants in a process that is seeing the steady demolition of the constitution and what it stands for. And I think I'm also extremely worried by this this notion of lateral entries at
Yes, that
different
is something
levels.
which I wanted to actually ask you next. Lateral entry.
Yeah.
What does it
All
really
see,
indicate?
and all of this indicates basically that in in the project to transform India into a majoritarian Hindu state, into a kind of mirror image of Zia's Pakistan, if you like. In that project, you have to the instrument of your transformation substantially is going to be
The civil service.
the civil services, and you cannot a civil service which is actually recruited and trained to defend the constitution would be a very big blockage in the journey that you want to take the country on, and therefore what is underway is a transformation of the civil services in order to enable the transformation of the nation in the direction that never was envisaged in the constitution.
I would like to understand a bit more about the lateral entry. What it has happened, what it has done to the UPSC. The process which has been set up by the UPSC of recruiting civil servants, and what effect has it had on services and the quality of you know services as far as citizens are concerned.
See, uh, I am so I'm out of government for the last 20,
Right.
20
Yes.
25 years.
20, 25
So
years, almost 25 years.
yeah, so I 20, 23,
23 to be precise.
23 years.
2002 to 23 years.
So, but as a citizen, what I observe, so
Yeah.
I would rather talk about the dangers that this
Right.
contains
Of the
because
lateral entry.
of the lateral entry. And so on the one hand, you have a selection by the UPSC, which you first, you fill it with people who are ideologically aligned to an ideological framework which is in contradiction to the constitution, and then you equip them to bring people in at very senior positions. It carries huge dangers. Uh, how much, how it has been deployed, since that order, I
Wouldn't we really wouldn't be able to figure that out because
yes, yes.
not having studied that, but that is the danger.
And
There's also
once again, I would like to underline that it should not, it should be actually something that is transparently put out. We are filling these positions, these are the qualities, these are the competencies that we are searching for, this is the process by which names have been invited, this is the process of shortlisting, this is the process of selection. These are the qualities that these persons have to fulfill this responsibility. That has to be in the public domain. And अगर दिल साफ हो इसके लिए, if they're really wanting to do this to increase, enhance the competence of the civil service, of course the competence of the civil service needs to be enhanced. Of course, if there is a, if there's a credible independent process of induction, I would not have a problem with it. But the worry is that it will only pack people at senior positions. So you're not just content with getting new people in who are much more ideologically aligned to your way of thinking. You want them also placed at senior positions. That's really, really worrying.
One last question. This is the centenary year where obviously there is a certain amount of an official celebration which is being conducted and being done by the UPSC and being joined by several other, government institutions. All that would be publicized. It will have a narrative of its own. But what do you think should be, done by the people like you who are now in members of the civil society, in the media? What should be the initiatives or what should be the framework of debate on UPSC 100 years and especially the challenges for the coming years and what are the kind of reforms should be done over the next few years? What
Then
should be?
my friends, I said Nilanjan, my friend. Uh, I think it's very clear that democracy is deeply threatened in our country, and various institutions that we expected to be standing in defense of India's democracy and constitutional democracy are failing us. I think that the media needs to do a great deal of introspection. I think the judiciary needs to do a great deal of introspection. And of course, the political opposition needs to do a great deal of introspection. Academia needs to do a great deal of introspection. I think this should be a time of deep introspection uh, by by the civil service about what role is the civil service playing at this moment where India's democracy is declining. We're being pushed more and more into a majoritarian, authoritarian, I would say also crony capitalist direction. Uh, if is the civil service playing the role that it was imagined to when Sardar Patel spoke of it as India's steel frame?
Seat frame.
And if not, then where are we going wrong in? And it has to start with the recruitment process. Where are we going wrong in our recruitment, in our training, in our evaluation, all of these? But since it is 100 years of the UPSC, let's have a
Debate,
huge public
discussion.
debate about what role the civil service has played, the police, the IAS, also India's diplomatic service, in these India's forest service, in these really difficult times. And if it has fallen short, then what was the process of recruitment? and where did it fail us? These are
And
the questions.
what is the state of the services and how it is being molded and guided
And
into
then, yeah,
in a different direction?
yeah, and then what needs to be done? I mean, these are difficult questions in when we're saying I mean, we're looking at what's happened to the election commission. I think huge segment of India is has lost complete faith in how it is functioning, but we seem helpless to be able to do anything about it. I think I would say the same about India's police and administrative services. I think we're watching almost helplessly as it is transformed in a direction very contrary to what it was established for. And I think that should be the center of our public debate.
I think that's very well stated. That we should, the UPSC is 100 years. We still have time. There should be a public debate, and we should ask very difficult questions. You have, looked at some of the very dark spots of the Indian Republic, but then that is the job of the media to try to put some light, focus some lights on the dark spots. And I hope that our viewers would have learnt a bit more about the UPSC, and also to know that as citizens, what kind of questions they can keep on asking over the next 1 year. Thank you very much, Harsh Mander. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Nilanjan. Always a pleasure to be with you, to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.